Gosh, that worked quickly. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to hand you over to, I was just about to hand you over to Emily to introduce the Home Secretary, but she's not quite ready yet. So I'm trying to remember what I did to fill the time last year, but it's probably not lingered long in your memories either. But I'm going to invite Emily here in just a short moment to introduce the Home Secretary. And please submit your questions on Slido. We've got a short period of time after Yvette Cooper finishes her remarks for a Q&A. So I would urge you to get the questions rolling in if possible. And I will leave you to wait for Emily, who'll introduce her.
My introduction is literally 30 seconds, so I don't want to do it too soon and then we're waiting. So I'm just going to check she's coming. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for coming back. I hope you enjoyed your break. So it was obviously only a year ago that our next speaker was standing here as the Shadow Home Secretary, and a lot has happened in that last 12 months. Not least, she has become the actual Home Secretary. So I'm really delighted to introduce the Right Honourable Yvette Cooper, who's going to be speaking to us about the government's vision and priorities for policing. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Emily, and thank you to all of you for having me today. It is a pleasure to be here this morning. Not, of course, my first time at this conference, but my first time as Home Secretary. So it is my chance to say thank you to all of you for the phenomenal work that you and your officers and staff do each day across the country to keep us all safe. So I have been in the job for just 5 months, but within 5 days of being appointed, I had already met officers from across the country who had shown the most extraordinary courage in the face of extreme danger. Officers who ran towards men armed with knives or guns or explosive devices when most of us would just run for cover. Officers who had plunged into floodwaters to save the life of a trapped motorist. And an off-duty officer who had put aside all thought of his own safety to try to save the life of a 9-year-old girl. They were the officers from across the country who had been nominated for the Police Bravery Awards. Awards that I've attended for more than a decade, but this time had the honour of welcoming the winners to Downing Street. And what every one of them always says, as many of you will know, is, I was just doing my job. But of course, as we know, this isn't an ordinary job. It's a job where every officer sees those dangers and knows tomorrow it could be them. A remarkable public service calling that unites the longest-serving Chief Constable and the newest recruit. So as we award the very first Elizabeth emblems, something which many of us have campaigned for many years, I want to pay special tribute today to Bryn Hughes, to Paul Bone, to all those across policing who have led the campaign, and especially to Bryn and Paul's daughters, Nicola Hughes and Fiona Bone, and to all the brave officers who gave their lives in service to keep the rest of us safe. So those who put themselves in harm's way deserve our constant respect and support. And that's why it's a total disgrace that attacks on police officers in recent years have gone up. We must never tolerate attacks and abuse against police officers and staff for doing their job. And we will always seek the toughest of penalties for those guilty of assault against the police. And rightly, we talk about how the police run towards danger when everyone else runs away. But we should also talk about how police officers, PCSOs and police staff also walk towards the toughest of troubles when everyone else turns their back. How they step in and face the problems that the rest of us cannot solve. The forensic officers who walk towards a disturbing murder scene to find the evidence that might bring a killer to justice. Or the PCSOs who walk towards an elderly man with dementia who needs to be taken home. Or the digital investigation teams who have to examine the most horrific images of child abuse online to track down dangerous perpetrators. And the family liaison officers who have the heartbreaking task of knocking on the door to tell a family that their loved one will never be coming home. Those are the jobs no one else wants to deal with. But when everything else is broken, it's the police we turn to pick up the pieces and to keep people safe. And that is the dedication that lies at the heart of policing in our country. Our proud British tradition of policing by consent, a tradition rooted in our values of community, justice, respect for the rule of law. It's been almost 200 years since the development of Robert Peel's founding principles, premised on the belief that the police are the public and the public are the police, preventing crime and disorder, policing without fear or favour, and maintaining that mutual respect between officers and the local communities they serve. Traditions and values that we should never take for granted because they underpin the rule of law and the very cornerstone of our democracy. But it's because I believe so strongly in our British way of doing policing and in the vital work that you and your forces do every day that I'm also clear we need to face some difficult truths about the way policing works today. Because over the last decade or more, policing across England and Wales has started to buckle under the strain. We've seen visible neighbourhood policing decimated across the country, with fewer police on the beat, breaking the vital link between local forces and the police and the people they serve. We've seen crime evolving at breakneck speed, policing struggling to keep pace, and we've seen fewer crimes solved and more victims let down. Officers increasingly burdened by bureaucracy and stuck behind desks instead of out on the front line. Confidence falling among victims and among communities, as too often people fear that no one will come and nothing will be done. Governance systems that failing to maintain standards or prevent abuse by rogue officers, and outdated technology holding policing back. I mean, the police national computer is now 50 years old. It was cutting edge when I was 5. So while policing in our country has been through that perfect storm, forces have struggled to keep up because of cuts, conflict, and fragmentation. And instead of clear leadership from government to help you navigate those difficult waters, the opposite has usually been true. Too often, the government just walked away or made the job harder. And too many politicians, including some of my predecessors in this department, have stood on the sidelines shouting at the police when things have gone wrong instead of rolling up their sleeves and working in partnership with the police to tackle these challenges head on. And the result is that at present, our police officers cannot do the job they signed up for in the way that they want to and cannot deliver for the public as they should, leaving our precious tradition of policing by consent in peril and leaving victims and communities let down. And I'm not prepared for us to carry on like this. Our police officers deserve better and the public deserve better, which is why the government has set out our mission for safer streets, with our unprecedented ambitions to halve violence against women and girls and to halve the knife crime that devastates young lives in a decade, and our essential task to rebuild confidence in policing and the criminal justice system and to restore the public sense of safety on our streets. Reducing harm, rebuilding confidence. a mission rooted not just in the responsibility that any government has to keep people safe, but rooted in our values, that security is the foundation of opportunity, and that families don't thrive if they don't feel safe, and communities can't be strong if they don't feel secure. So this is a mission for the whole of government, for institutions across the country, and for every one of our communities. But I'm clear that policing must play that central part in that mission. In the coming weeks, in the normal way, we'll set out the full funding settlement for policing, including the precept and government grants. I can tell you today that direct central government funding for policing will increase by more than £500 million next year, including over £260 million for the core grant and also additional funding for neighbourhood policing, counter-terrorism and the National Crime Agency. But we'll need to go further to make every penny of new investment count. That's why we've already begun working with you on a new collaboration and efficiencies programme, working across police forces, starting with energy contracts, IT contracts, fleet contracts, with the potential to save you hundreds of millions of pounds over the next few years to put back into frontline policing. And working with you on tackling the bureaucracy that drags policing down, including reforms on redaction, the use of new technology, to free up more time for officers to get back on the front line. But we all know that funding and incremental change won't address all the challenges that policing faces. And over many years, I've heard calls from across policing for new and positive reforms, including from many of you in this room today. So today I'm setting out a new roadmap for policing reform across England and Wales, which I'm determined that policing and the government must drive forward together. An ambitious programme of change to create a police service fit for the future. And next year, we will publish a new white paper on policing. It will cover issues from technology to the future workforce, from how the policing system can work better to tackle fast-changing crime and leadership and culture. But today, I want to highlight 4 of the key areas for reform: neighbourhood policing, police performance, structures and capabilities, and crime prevention. So first, I'm determined neighbourhood policing must be rebuilt. Many of you warned a decade ago of the damage that austerity was doing to neighbourhood policing. Ministers said you were crying wolf, but now we know who was right. Even after the previous government reversed the reduction in the overall number of officers, policing hasn't returned to our streets. There are still fewer officers in neighbourhood teams, the number of PCSOs has halved, and the proportion of the public who say they never see an officer on the beat has doubled. So it's little wonder then that the types of crimes and conduct that neighbourhood policing used to tackle have soared in recent years. Shop theft is up at a record high, street theft is up 40% in a year, and town centres are too often blighted with persistent antisocial behaviour, leaving residents feeling unsafe. And criminals, often organised gangs, are just getting away with it. We cannot stand for this. So the impact good neighbourhood policing has on local community confidence, local business confidence, should never be underestimated. But local officers and PCSOs who know their patch are also the building block of every other aspect of policing too, be it tackling domestic abuse, serious organised crime, or extremist and terror threats. Having teams embedded in local communities who know what is going on is invaluable. And that is why the restoration of neighbourhood policing will be at the heart of our plans. It's why we've committed to delivering an additional 13,000 police officers, PCSOs and special constables into neighbourhood policing roles, and we'll set out further steps in the coming weeks. But second, we need a new approach to raising performance and standards across every force. So let's be clear. If you are a victim of stalking or domestic abuse or shop theft or street theft, burglary, car crime, you've a right to expect that wherever you are in the country, you'll get a high-quality response. And you've a right to expect that everyone, from local police leaders to the Home Secretary, is working to drive up those standards. But too often, that doesn't happen. Too often, chiefs and police and crime commissioners and mayors don't have the data to see even how they compare to other forces or what progress they're making relative to others. Too often, important recommendations made by the inspectorate or the college don't get implemented. Right across the country, there are pockets of brilliance, there are patches of serious failure, but we don't have a clear framework for showing what works or what needs rapidly to change. And the result isn't just a postcode lottery, it's a blindfold one, where people don't even know if they should have got better response from their local force. The Policing Inspectorate has rightly called for a new national performance framework. Police leaders support that proposal, but up until now, it hasn't happened. So this government will make sure it does. A new performance unit in the Home Office will work with you, with the NPCC, the College of Policing, the Inspectorate, the APCC, to draw up a clear, agreed performance framework. And modelled on the old standards unit introduced by David Blunkett, it will use high-quality police data to spot trends, drive up standards, performance and consistency. Restoring public confidence, and focusing on those key mission priorities, neighbourhood policing, violence against women and knife crime, so communities feel safer and more criminals pay the price. But third, if we want policing to be more effective, we need better coordination across forces and more efficient, responsive support services. The coordinated public order response we saw in August between police forces across the country was vital to showing that criminals responsible for that violence would not get away with it. But that was the result of exemplary leadership and partnership shown by police leaders in this room that operated in spite of, not because of, the systems that we had in place. So when I asked during those weeks why the data intelligence sharing was so slow, why the information was so hard to obtain, the answer I got was, well, it's like this all the time. But that's not good enough. As crime becomes ever more complex, as threats cut across force boundaries, we need to look again at the capabilities at local, regional and national level and the way that they are coordinated. So take forensics, where the adoption of cutting-edge forensic science across the board has been held back by uncoordinated funding, fragmented governance, resulting in duplication of effort and an inability to implement strategic plans. Or police helicopters, where police chiefs and PCCs and mayors across the country are in continual negotiation on what next year's funding should be. Or technology procurement, where every force wrestles over and over again with the same questions about new software, IT changes, record management, wasting time, pushing up costs, and creating systems that often aren't even interoperable. Instead of technology driving great leaps forward in policing, too often it is holding policing back. So that is why we're determined to work with you on a new national centre of policing to bring together crucial support services that local police forces can draw on to raise standards and improve efficiency. And as a starting point, I would see this body taking on responsibility for existing shared services, national IT capabilities, force-hosted national capabilities such as the National Police Air Service and forensics. But looking further, we'll explore with you the opportunities to expand its remit around those operational responsibilities where effective coordination is critical for success. And finally, on crime prevention. If we're to halve knife crime and violence against women and girls, it can't all be done through policing and the criminal justice system, or by any agency or government department acting alone. Police and crime commissioners and mayors in different corners of the country have driven important local work on crime prevention. But we need a new partnership with you. I was shocked to discover on arrival at the Home Office how little the department itself had been doing on prevention, and that has to change. Already we're driving new action from curbing knife sales to tackling mobile phone theft, but we need to go much further, both locally and nationally, for the mission to be met. So all of this can only be done together. The roadmap for reform only works as a joint programme. Rebuilding confidence in policing and reducing serious violence can only succeed if it is a shared endeavour between government and the police. That doesn't mean there won't be scrutiny, accountability, challenge or disagreement, because of course there will. And it also means respecting the different constitutional roles that we respectively have to play. From me, that will mean setting a clear strategic direction through our missions and holding policing more robustly to account on performance. But it will also mean having respect for your operational independence and expertise. This time last year, the Home Secretary had just been sacked for choosing to undermine that independence, questioning the impartiality of the service, and for stoking up tensions towards officers when they had a difficult policing job to do. So when it comes to the challenges you face and the reforms that I've set out today, you will always find me a fair and willing partner ready to talk to you about what works and what doesn't and how together we can best keep our communities safe. So this is a critical juncture for the future of policing. Reform is never achieved overnight, but nor can it be put off any longer. To get back to those Peel principles, policing must now move forward. And amidst all the challenges, we also have a huge opportunity ahead of us. An opportunity for a fundamental reset in the relationship between policing and the government in place of political pointless blame games, and an opportunity to rebuild the confidence of communities in the vital job our police do each day to keep us all safe. I believe in the British policing model. I believe in the men and women who work day and night in our police forces to protect the public. And I truly believe that working together on this roadmap for reform and on the delivery of our mission, we can deliver a fairer, safer country for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Home Secretary. I'm afraid you had to do the same long walk that you did last year as well. Welcome. Thank you very much indeed for that. I know our time with you is a little short, so I'll get cracking. I mean, you have had a baptism of fire as Home Secretary, as you alluded to at the beginning of your remarks.